Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're cutting straight through the red tape and bureaucratic noise to decode a very specific, honestly incredibly important piece of government administration, the rules defining India's economically weaker sections, or EWS reservation. We're going to unpack the precise official guidelines that dictate exactly who qualifies for this status.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're looking at the 10% EWS reservation, how they define family income, the strict asset exclusions, and finally, the certification process. Let's dive right in.
Part 1. The 10% EWS reservation.
If we really want to understand a policy, we've got to go straight to the primary source material. What we're looking at here is the actual Office Memorandum, dated January 19, 2019, straight from the Ministry of Personnel. Yeah, it looks like a dense wall of bureaucratic text, right? But don't worry, our whole goal today is to translate this exact document into plain, actionable language. No fluff, just the facts pulled directly from these official paragraphs.
And it all begins with this foundational metric, 10%. The document officially announces the government's decision to carve out a 10% reservation. Now, this applies specifically to civil posts and services within the Government of India and, absolutely crucial here, for admissions into educational institutions.
But you might be wondering, who exactly is this 10% for? Well, the memorandum grounds this policy in the 103rd Constitution Amendment Act of 2019, and this is actually super interesting because it highlights the specific gap the government was trying to fill. The text makes it crystal clear, this is for folks who are not already covered under existing reservation schemes. So if someone is already covered under reservations for scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, or socially and educationally backward classes, they actually don't fall under this new EWS umbrella. This 10%, it's a completely separate bucket.
Moving on to Part 2, defining the family income.
So, if you weren't covered by those other reservations, how does the government mathematically decide if you're quote-unquote economically weaker? Well, it all boils down to one very specific threshold, 8 lakh rupees. The memo explicitly states that to be identified as EWS, a person's family must have a gross annual income strictly below 8 lakh rupees. Hit exactly 8 lakhs or go above it? No way, you don't qualify. It's a hard line drawn in the sand by the administration.
But how exactly do you calculate that 8 lakh figure? What goes into it? The document strictly mandates that you have to tally up revenue from all sources. We're not just talking about your standard monthly paycheck here. The text explicitly lists salary, agriculture, business, and profession. Basically the whole shebang. Oh, and you have to make sure you're looking at the right time frame. It must be the income for the financial year prior to the year of your application.
Now here's where it gets a bit technical. Who actually makes up the family when you're pooling this income? You might think of your family one way, but the government, they have a highly specific administrative definition. According to the text, the family includes the person seeking the reservation, their parents, and their siblings. But catch this, only siblings who are under 18. It also ropes in the applicant's spouse and any of their children who are under 18. You only pool the income of those specific people to check against that 8 lakh limit.
All right, Part 3, the asset exclusions. Now, staying under that 8 lakh limit, that's really just the first hurdle, because the memorandum introduces a massive caveat right here. It says that people whose families own or possess certain assets are instantly excluded from EWS status. And the absolute key phrase here is irrespective of the family income. Let that sink in for a second. Even if your annual family income is literally zero, owning any of these specific assets results in immediate disqualification. End of story.
Let's walk through this carefully because the government uses highly rigid, physical measurements to establish this economic status. There are 4 specific triggers that'll knock you out of the running. First up, if your family owns 5 acres of agricultural land and above, you're excluded. Second, owning a residential flat of 1,000 square feet and above, that excludes you too. Third, owning a residential plot of 100 square yards and above in notified municipalities. And fourth, a residential plot of 200 square yards and above in areas other than notified municipalities. Hitting or exceeding even a single one of these physical metrics totally disqualifies the applicant. It's kind of like a bureaucratic tripwire.
Finally, Part 4, certification and implementation.
So, we know the rules and we know the limits, but how does one actually, practically claim this status? Well, the text lays out a strict bureaucratic flow to make sure everything's above board. Step 1. All your income and assets have to be thoroughly verified following the state or union territory's due process. Step 2. The EWS certificate can only be issued by an officer not below the rank of Tahsildar. A designated ranking official literally has to put their name on the line to vouch for it. And Step 3. Once you've secured that verified certificate, you're officially cleared to apply for those vacancies and admissions.
Now, looking at the second page of that official memorandum, there's something really fascinating at the bottom, this massive distribution list. The ministry didn't just quietly file this away. They sent this document to the secretaries of all ministries and departments, the Railway Board, the Supreme Court, the Election Commission, and multiple national commissions. It was a sweeping, whole-of-government notification designed to ensure total compliance across the entire central apparatus.
And at the very top of that second page, we find the critical activation date. The document officially states that this 10% EWS reservation became effective for all direct recruitment vacancies notified on or after February 1, 2019. That was the exact cutoff date. That was the moment these specific rules, those strict income limits and those rigid asset exclusions, transitioned from just a constitutional amendment on paper into a mandatory operational reality for government hiring.
Which leaves us with a pretty compelling thought to chew on as we wrap up this explainer. We spent our time today looking at exactly how a government structures policy, right? We've seen the hard lines drawn by the administration, but it begs a really fascinating question. When translating complex human economic struggle into strict administrative rules, do rigid black and white limits like 8 lakhs and 5 acres truly capture the full, nuanced reality of financial weakness? Actually, it's a massive challenge every government faces when writing policy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope this deep dive into the primary source material has empowered you with a clearer understanding of the EWS framework. Keep learning, and as always, keep asking great questions.